Most people ruin their garden with the very first flower they buy, and they don't find out until it's too late to fix. Her neighbor spent $200, just flowers, planted with a little bit of knowledge most people never bother to learn. Her neighbor's yard now stops traffic. Literally, people pull over to take pictures of a garden that cost less than one landscaping consultation. Here's the part that should make you a little angry. It was never about money. It was about knowing exactly which flowers to place where, in what combination, and in what order. Most homeowners are doing this completely backwards, and today I'm going to show you exactly why. In this video, I'm breaking down 10 flower decorating ideas that can transform any garden, big, small, front yard, backyard, even a tiny apartment patio. We're going deep on each one, not just naming flowers, but showing you exactly how to use them. And number 7 is the one most homeowners never think of, but professional garden designers use it constantly to make a space feel 10 times more expensive than it actually is. Before we get into it, if you're someone who wants their garden to actually look good this year, not just okay, hit subscribe now. Here's why that matters. I post new garden transformations and plant combinations every week, and if you miss the seasonal timing on some of these ideas, you're waiting a full year to try them again. Subscribing means you won't miss the window. All right, let's get into it. Number 1, the color block border. Most gardens fail because people plant one of everything. One rose, one daisy, one tulip, scattered around like confetti. It looks chaotic, and chaotic reads as cheap, even when the individual flowers are expensive. The color block method flips this completely. Instead of variety, you commit to 3 colors maximum, and you plant them in bold, repeated clusters along a border, 5 or 7 of the same flower together, then a gap, then another cluster of a different color. Landscape designers call this drift planting, and it's the single fastest way to make a garden look professionally designed rather than randomly assembled. The surprising fact here is that odd numbers matter more than most people realize. Human eyes are subconsciously drawn to asymmetry in nature. Clusters of 3, 5, or 7 feel organic, while even numbers like 4 or 6 feel artificial and stiff, almost like a fence. But even a perfect color block border falls flat if you ignore one detail almost everyone forgets, something about height that we're covering in idea number 2. Layered height planting. Here's a mistake I see constantly. Every flower in the garden is the same height. From a distance, it just looks like a flat green and color carpet. There's no depth, no drama, nothing for your eye to travel through. The fix is layering by height. The same way you'd arrange people in a photograph, tallest in back, medium in the middle, and short and trailing in front. Think tall, spiky flowers like foxglove or delphinium in the back row, rounded, mid-height flowers like zinnias or coneflowers in the middle, and low, spreading flowers like alyssum or creeping phlox spilling over the front edge. What most people don't know is that this technique is directly borrowed from professional flower arranging, where florists use a thriller, filler, spiller rule for every single bouquet. Applying that exact same logic to your garden bed instantly makes it look intentional instead of accidental. But layering height is only half the story, because there's a specific spot in your yard doing all the visual work, and almost nobody uses it correctly. That's idea number 3. The focal point flower bed. Every garden that photographs well has one thing in common, a single point where your eye is drawn first. Without this, your eye just wanders aimlessly across the whole yard, and nothing feels memorable. A focal point can be a large flowering shrub like hydrangea, a dramatic cluster of tall dahlias, or even a single flowering tree underplanted with a circle of color. The key is placement. It usually works best positioned slightly off-center, visible from your main viewing point, whether that's your front door, your porch, or your kitchen window. The fact almost nobody realizes is that garden designers often place the focal point using the rule of thirds, borrowed straight from photography, imagining the yard divided into a 3x3 grid and placing the star feature on one of the intersecting lines rather than dead center. Quick question for you. When you look out your own window right now, is there one spot that actually draws your eye, or does your garden feel kind of flat and scattered? Type your honest answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if you're realizing your garden might be missing that one focal point, subscribe now, because next week's video is entirely about choosing and placing focal plants for small yards specifically, and you don't want to miss it before spring planting season closes. 4. Vertical flower walls. Most people only think horizontally, beds, borders, pots on the ground, but some of the most jaw-dropping gardens use vertical space, and it's shockingly underused by average homeowners. Trellises covered in climbing roses, clematis, or sweet peas turn a boring fence into a living wall of color. Hanging tiered planters stacked on a shepherd's hook can hold 3 or 4 different trailing flowers in the same footprint a single pot would take. Even an old ladder leaned against a wall with flower pots on each rung becomes a design feature. The surprising fact, vertical planting doesn't just look impressive, it actually improves air circulation around your other flowers, reducing fungal disease and mildew, something most gardeners spend money on treating without realizing better airflow design would have prevented it. Speaking of things people don't realize, idea number 5 is about a planting mistake that's quietly killing your flower budget every single season. 5. Perennial-annual combination beds. This is where most people waste enormous amounts of money without realizing it. Annual flowers, the petunias and marigolds you buy every spring, die every single year. You're paying full price every season forever. The smarter approach is building your garden around a perennial backbone. Coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, peonies, daylilies, plants that come back year after year for free. Then you fill gaps and add seasonal pops of color with annuals. This gives you a garden that looks completely different from your neighbors because you have a permanent structure of color with fresh accents layered in. Here's what almost nobody calculates. Over a 5-year period, a perennial heavy garden can cost 60 to 70% less than an all-annual garden, while still looking fuller and more established every single year, since perennials spread and multiply on their own. But there's one specific perennial mistake that ruins gardens in year 2, and it's coming up in idea number 6, succession blooming. Here's a garden killer nobody warns you about. Most people accidentally plant everything to bloom at once. For 3 glorious weeks in June, the garden looks incredible. Then, for the rest of the year, green leaves and nothing else. Succession blooming means deliberately choosing flowers based on their bloom windows, so something is always flowering. Tulips and daffodils in early spring, peonies and irises in late spring, coneflowers and black-eyed Susans through summer, and asters or mums carrying you into fall. The fact most gardeners never learn is professional botanical gardens actually keep a bloom calendar spreadsheet for every single plant they own, planning color transitions the way a film director plans scenes. You can do the exact same thing with a simple notebook. Real talk, has your garden ever looked amazing for like 3 weeks and then just gone quiet for the rest of the year? Comment yes if that's happened to you. I read every single comment on these videos. And if you want the full bloom calendar breakdown by month, subscribe now because I'm building a complete planting calendar series and you'll want it before next season's planning starts. 7. The odd container trick. This is the one I promised you, the one most homeowners never think of but professional designers rely on constantly. Instead of matching flower pots, professional designers deliberately use mismatched, unexpected containers, an old wheelbarrow overflowing with petunias, a rustic wooden crate with marigolds, a vintage watering can repurposed as a planter. This single trick makes a space feel curated, personal, and expensive rather than store-bought. The psychology behind it is what's surprising. Uniform matching pots signal recently purchased, while eclectic, characterful containers signal collected over time, which our brains subconsciously associate with an established, high-value garden, even if you bought everything at a thrift store last weekend for $20. This next idea is the cheapest one on this entire list, and it might be the most underrated. 8. self-seeding wildflower patches. Most people think a wildflower garden means messy and uncontrolled. Done right, it's actually one of the lowest effort, highest impact choices you can make. Cosmos, poppies, cornflowers, and zinnias will self-seed, meaning they drop seeds at the end of the season that sprout again next year without you planting anything. Choose a defined area, even a small one. Edge it cleanly with a border or stones so it reads as intentional rather than neglected, and let nature do the rest. The surprising fact, studies on pollinator gardens show that self-seeding wildflower patches attract up to 3 times more bees and butterflies than manicured hybrid flower beds because the varied bloom shapes and open pollen structures are far easier for pollinators to access. Idea number 9 takes this natural approach even further into something most gardeners are actively afraid to try. 9. Fragrance zones. Almost everyone designs a garden purely for how it looks. Almost nobody designs for how it smells, and that's a massive missed opportunity. Creating a fragrance zone means grouping scented flowers like lavender, jasmine, sweet peas, and roses near high-traffic areas, a front door, a porch swing, a garden bench, so the scent actually gets experienced, not just wasted in some far corner of the yard nobody walks past. Here's the surprising part. Scent is more strongly tied to memory than any other sense, according to neuroscience research on the brain's olfactory bulb. A well-placed fragrance zone doesn't just make your garden pleasant, it makes it memorable to guests in a way visuals alone never will. And our final idea combines almost everything we've covered into the single most photographed garden style in the world right now. 10. The cottage garden mix. This is the culmination, a deliberately overflowing, romantic style that combines layered heights, color blocking, perennial-annual mixing, and self-seeding wildflowers into one lush, abundant look. Cottage gardens use dense planting with almost no visible soil, soft, curving pathways instead of straight lines, and a color palette that feels romantic rather than rigid. Pastels, whites, and soft pinks mixed with pops of deeper color. The rule is that there are no rules. The beauty comes from abundance and layering rather than precision. The fact that surprises people most is that this style originated centuries ago out of necessity, not fashion. English cottagers packed flowers, herbs, and vegetables together in tiny spaces because they had no room to separate them. What was once poverty-driven practicality became one of the most sought-after, expensive-looking garden aesthetics in the world today. Here's what ties every single one of these 10 ideas together. None of them are about spending more money. They're about spending your effort in the right place. Color, height, timing, and placement instead of just buying more flowers and hoping for the best. That Ohio homeowner from the beginning of this video didn't need a $4,000 landscaping crew. She needed to know that flowers plant in clusters, that height creates depth, that bloom times can overlap, and a mismatched wheelbarrow can outshine an expensive matching pot set. A beautiful garden isn't a budget, it's a set of decisions, and now you know every one of them. If this video helped you see your garden differently, next week I'm covering the 7 biggest flower-killing mistakes gardeners make without even realizing it. Trust me, mistake number 4 is one almost everyone is currently making right now, today, in their own yard. Subscribe before you go so you don't miss it, and drop a comment below telling me which of these 10 ideas you're trying first. I read every single comment, and I genuinely love to see what you plant. Until next time, get your hands in that soil. I'll see you in the next one.